Picture this. It's a deep, incredibly dark night, and the wind is howling, literally sounding like it's tearing the sky apart. The streets of Veroli village are completely deserted. There's zero movement. The only thing you can hear is the violent snapping of tree branches and a single temple bell, swinging and ringing entirely on its own. Inside that temple, completely shrouded in darkness, sits a solitary lamp in front of an ancient idol. Now for years, this lamp has never ever gone out, but tonight, it does. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are unpacking a seriously chilling piece of folklore from the village of Veroli.
It's a pretty terrifying question, isn't it? Like, what actually happens when a pact made centuries ago is just abandoned? Today, we're going to actively investigate the haunting legend of Rakandar Baba. We're going to look at the exact timeline of events that went down when a modern village decided to just turn its back on an ancient, blood-bound tradition, which ultimately triggered a massive wave of unexplained and, quite frankly, horrifying phenomena.
So, the inciting incident of this whole mystery kicks off with the village priest, a man named Ganesh Rao, and his assistant Deepak. They discover that the eternal lamp in front of the Rakandar Baba idol has just inexplicably died. There was no wind inside to blow it out. But even more disturbing than that, they find this strange, unexplained ash scattered right in front of the idol, almost as if someone had just casually dusted off their hands. The priest instantly recognizes this as a dark omen, and literally moments later, a blood-curdling scream echoes from the very edge of the village.
That scream? It leads them straight to the home of a villager named Vithal. They bust down his door and find him dead on the floor. His body is completely stiff. His eyes are wide open, locked in this horrifying stare pointing directly toward the temple. His nails have turned completely pitch black. But here's the most chilling detail. There's ash smeared on his lips, and 3 distinct trails of ash dragging right across the floor. It was exactly as if an ash-covered entity had entered, attacked, and just vanished into thin air. As the villagers gather around Vithal's lifeless body in absolute, stunned silence, a murmur starts to ripple through the crowd. The protector has awakened. Now, to understand the sheer terror behind that statement, we actually have to look backward. We need to figure out exactly who or what this protector really is.
Part 1. Legend of Rakandar Baba, the origins.
Okay, let's dive into this. The entire history of Veroli village is deeply intertwined with a centuries-old supernatural battle. The temple sitting on the village border, known as the Rakandar Temple, is famously covered in a thick layer of ancient ash. Now, the word Rakandar translates to protector or guardian. Centuries ago, Veroli was plagued by an evil spirit sent by a dark tantric woman named Kalani. People were vanishing in the dead of night, kids were being found with blue marks on their necks, and bodies were turning up in the fields. It was bad. The village was literally on the brink of collapse until a visiting sadhu, a holy man named Dhruvnath, arrived from Benares with one specific goal: to free the village.
But Sadhu Dhruvnath didn't just fight this entity, right? He bound it. First, he sat and meditated continuously for 7 days outside the temple. Then, on the 8th night, an absolutely massive supernatural battle took place. The lore says lightning struck, the earth shook, and ash rose right up from the ground. In the ultimate act of sacrifice, the sadhu bound his own soul to the evil spirit, trapping them both together forever. He physically turned into the very ash that now coats the temple walls.
But here's the catch. A binding like that requires some serious upkeep. To make sure the sadhu's spirit remained awake and powerful enough to keep those dark forces at bay, a strict vow was established. Every single year, on the full moon of Ashada, known as Ashada Purnima, the village had to offer a goat sacrifice. This ritual was literally the only thing keeping the protector satisfied and the entire village safe. For generations, this was unquestioned law. Well, until now.
Part 2. Canceling the sacred ritual, a clash of ideologies.
This brings us to the modern catalyst of our explainer. Enter the newly elected Sarpanch, Shankar Rao Patil. He's an educated guy from the city with a distinctly modern worldview. So when the time for the annual sacrifice rolls around, he looks at this centuries-old tradition and makes a highly controversial decision. He publicly declares the ritual over. He states, "This is all superstition. In today's world, we will not shed blood." He entirely dismisses the folklore, argues that a progressive village simply cannot rely on animal sacrifice, and just cancels the whole shebang. And this brilliantly illustrates the tension between tradition and modernity. On one side, we have this modern skepticism. The Sarpanch wants to move the village forward, relying on, doctors and logic rather than fear. But on the other side, we have the deeply rooted traditional belief held by the locals. To them, the Rakandar isn't just some benevolent god you can simply stop praying to whenever you feel like it. No, it is a volatile entity bound by a highly fragile pact. They firmly believe that breaking this vow won't just invite a little bad luck, it's going to release a completely uncontrollable force.
So the crucial point here is summarized perfectly by the terrified village priest, Ganesh Rao. He confronts the Sarpanch and warns him with these exact words. He is an entity bound by ritual. If his vow remains unfulfilled, he will take his due. This right here, this marks the exact moment in our explainer where this local folklore turns into a terrifying survival thriller. The ritual is skipped, night falls, and the village waits.
Part 3. The terrifying consequences. Escalation.
The consequences of canceling this sacred ritual, they do not take long to show up. The escalation is unbelievably rapid, and it starts snowballing across the village immediately. On night 1, as we covered, the eternal lamp dies, and the priest actually witnesses the heavy stone idol shaking violently. By night 2, the horror moves out to the fields. Farmers wake up to find their livestock dead, not attacked by wild animals, but bizarrely burnt from the inside out, surrounded by these perfect circles of ash. And by night 3, it circles back to the temple. The priest and his assistant find the idol weeping a thick, red, blood-like fluid directly from its eyes.
At this point, a suffocating atmosphere of dread just completely takes over Verily. The source text describes this constant, overwhelming smell of ash just hanging in the air everywhere. Terrified villagers report hearing slow, wet, splashing footsteps circling the central well late at night. The village dogs, which are normally super noisy, completely refuse to bark, creating this eerie, totally unnatural silence. Ash handprints start appearing on people's front doors, cows are found dead, entirely drained of blood, and then the ultimate terror. A child vanishes into thin air from the fields, leaving a frantic mother pleading at the temple doors.
And then, the physical attacks on humans begin to spread. A villager named Ambaji is found out in his fields half dead. His face is completely drained of color, literally entirely white, and there is a massive amount of ash crushed directly onto his chest, as if this tremendous invisible weight had just pinned him down. The villagers are absolutely terrified, because they know exactly what is happening. The protector is collecting its due.
Which brings us to the number 3. See, the skeptical Sarpanch, the very man who canceled the ritual in the first place, begins suffering from horrific nightmares of an ash-covered entity demanding its vow. One night, locked in a trance, he sleepwalks directly toward the temple. He collapses right in front of it and dies of a sudden, massive heart attack. And when the villagers find his body the next morning, there are exactly 3 ash handprints pressed onto his face. The man who confidently called it a superstition became its most prominent victim.
Part 4. The final warning. The entity speaks.
By now, the village is broken. People are literally locking their doors in the middle of the day. The priest, Ganesh Rao, realizes that if they don't do something immediately, the Rakandar is going to wipe out the entire village. So he rallies the terrified remaining villagers, and they march to the temple in the dead of night to issue a desperate apology. Inside, the air is just thick with ash. As the priest chants, a towering ash-covered figure with glowing red eyes materializes. In a horrifying climax, the spirit possesses the young assistant, Deepak, and through Deepak's body, the entity's voice booms out in Marathi. Mazavrat apurna raila ahe. My vow is unfulfilled. The Rakandar reminds them that his blood and soul were tied to the land to protect them, and their arrogance broke that bond.
Then, the entity issues one final, bone-chilling ultimatum. Fulfill the vow, or the ash will be made of your blood. It is a complete zero-tolerance warning. Either the ritual continues, or the village will be erased. Trembling, the priest promises right then and there that the village will honor the full moon of Ashadha forever. The entity accepts the promise, Deepak collapses, and the suffocating ash finally clears from the air. The village survives. But look at how they adapt it. Today, the village of Varoli still honors the Rakandar Baba every single Ashada Purnima. But they actually found a pretty clever compromise between tradition and modernity. Instead of the old tradition of sacrificing a goat, the current tradition involves peacefully offering coconuts. They managed to fulfill the vow without shedding any blood. However, the villagers firmly maintain that if they ever forget this date, the temple bells will start ringing on their own, and that familiar smell of ash will return to the wind.
Which leaves us with this final thought. The story of Verley is such a fascinating look at the power of folklore, the strength of belief, and the deep, deep roots of village tradition. It asks a really profound question about the stories we pass down to the next generation. Where exactly do we draw the line between a simple myth meant to scare children and a very real warning we simply shouldn't ignore? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating legend with me today. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.